podcast, Conversations with DJ. You're my guest number either 16th or 17th, but thank you so much for coming and making the time to be here.
Thanks, AJ. This is fun. I'm stoked.
Yeah, so I know we talked a little bit about the hub earlier coming in, and I just want to getting started and kind of know how you got started with the hub itself.
Sure. Well, way back in the day, I think 2017 is when I first found pickleball. I live in Newport Beach, as I think you know, and was instrumental in building the tennis and pickleball club at Newport Beach and built the courts there and then the restaurant with my partner Ted and ran all those tournaments. In fact, I think that's maybe where we first met when Ryan Hurley was doing a lot of those, high-level groups and stuff like that. I remember seeing, Gabe Tardy was a baby going, what the hell, who's this kid?
Yeah, totally.
Anyway, guys like that and Hayden and the whole crew. So that's how it started. Basically, the club was in disarray and having a hard time. I found pickleball, and my wife and I would walk across the street, and they'd turn the lights on. We'd play singles, and we'd leave. They shut the lights off, and we'd go home. So it started from there, and helped develop that club. Didn't own it, but controlled and had the rights to the courts for the events. That's why we ran all those tournaments in Newport, and the PPA came in, and then we ran the golden tickets. And I know you've been to a bunch of them, and I don't know if we met there or I remember we met a couple of times at Dreamland. Remember the Tuesday night or Tuesday Night America thing or whatever it was, which was fun.
Yeah, Tuesday night pickleball in America or something like that. Yeah,
there you go. Those were actually very cool.
Yeah, they were.
How they did it with all mic'd up, and anyway, it was those were fun times for sure. But yeah, that's basically how I started pickleball, and then from there we found land in San Diego. And my partner, Ted Angelo, and I, got the land and basically built it out, brought a third partner in, Ken Tran, who was one of the owners of Takea. He's since sold Takea, and that's why they're out of the paddle business. Somebody wants to know what happened to that story, but basically Ken sold that company, and so he's starting another paddle company, by the way. And so the three of us basically, Ted and I run it. We build it, run them, and then that was the impetus of the hub, and it's been a wild ride ever since. I think we're the largest, certainly in California, with 3 clubs, and we're building our 4th. Ted just moved to Florida, and we're building our 4th in Jacksonville, Florida.
Awesome, very cool.
I know.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
I remember the first time that I met you. It might have been maybe like 2020 or 2021, somewhere around those lines. And I went to Newport to play in one of those groups, I think with Ryan Hurley. I don't know if it was that or if it was USA Pickleball, like Newport Beach or something like that. There was like a tournament. I think that was one of the first times that I met you. And I think you might have been commentating too. Was that a thing or no?
Kind of. So I helped USA Pickleball restructure the golden tickets. So it was all done through regionals, right? And as pickleball grew, that whole methodology didn't work, and so I was pitching it to Robert Quicksilver, who's the chairman of USA Pickleball, and he's a member of Newport. Anyway, long story short, I kind of helped reconstruct how it should be done with golden tickets. Hence, that's why Newport had it has a golden ticket basically, and so I did a contract with USAP to basically do the first one and then a 3-year deal. I ended up selling it last year to the APP. That's why the APP has them all now.
Okay.
So I think the one that you're talking about with the commentating, I think it was in 2020 during COVID, where that was the tournament I threw, and I put a $25,000 purse on it, and I got Riley and Tyson to kind of be the name of the tournament, and then I got Michelle and Rob to commentate, and then I would go sit in and help with the comment. It could have been that one because that was super fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. In 2020 a $25,000 purse is a lot of money.
And it was shut down, so we were the largest tournament of 2020, and we had like little over 500 people, and USA Pickleball tried to shut us down at the ninth hour, and I'm like,
Oh,
like,
really?
I'm like, no. Well, Governor Newsom came out and said on Monday we're going to shut the state back down because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
But the tournament was running over the weekend, and I'm like, well, he's not shutting it down, and we've already got this approved. So we ended up just, doing the tournament, and
Yeah.
it turned out to be fine. But yeah, no, crazy time. It was a fun tournament.
Yeah, for sure. Are you still somewhat connected to Newport, or are you just pure Hub?
And so just the hub.
Just
So,
Hub.
in Newport, since we didn't own it and everything else, I ended up selling the restaurant and, really started to build our own, I went kind of down this semi-retirement path, and that's when I started founding Pickleball. From there, my wife will tell you that was never going to end up that way anyway. So,
Mm-hmm.
so that's where I started doing, we started doing the hubs and everything else. So, but I don't do much at Newport anymore. We kind of, we don't own it, and just more
Gotcha.
better to build your own brands and,
Mm-hmm.
own the land and, do all the things that we're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you're also a founder or co-founder of Pickleball Superstore, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Co-founder, again, with Ted Angelo, and then my third partner, who's the CEO and runs it, Steve Rack. And that company is a special company. Steve's an amazing, super smart guy, has amazing technology that he's brought to the table, and does a phenomenal job. So I'm just I help fund it, and I'm the chairman of the board in that company, and it's just blowing up. I mean, we took the attitude of, Steve will tell you, it's, lack of scarcity mindset. And so we went out and we got, we opened up the opportunity for people to buy, common shares in the company, just like, I have, and to basically be owners of the company. And so now we have owners in 41 states. We have all this, we have technology that basically it's an affiliate program. But the difference with most affiliate programs is that it's cookie based. And so when you bring somebody in, if you give a code to somebody and you bring them into a company, in 30 days, that code, or your connection with the person that you brought to the manufacturer goes away. With our technology, it's embedded in the programming, so it doesn't go away. So if you bring someone in, you're going to get a percentage of revenue basically for the life of the customer.
Mm-hmm.
So from an influencer's position, it's makes it a sustainable business model.
Yeah.
So because of that structure and that technology that's exclusive to us, that company is just growing leaps and bounds. And again, we've partnered with amazing people and amazing company like Tyson McGuffin now, and the APP and PPR, the coaching certification. We just I can announce it here. We're doing a deal with Duper, so Duper will be a partner as well, and we're working with USA Pickleball, and just so we're kind of trying to circle the wagon on just everyone who wants to participate in it, and obviously the revenues generated from a distribution company in the pickleball space are real and substantial. We have like 2,400 SKUs of paddles, glasses. Too many products, DJ.
Yeah, for sure.
But
There's a lot of them out there.
yeah, but no, it's great. It's fun. In fact, if you Google us, or if you Google pickleball paddles, we're organically now the number one, company that pops up on the search engines. And yeah, it's been great. It's been a fun run.
That's awesome, dude. Very, very cool. And that said, I know we've been talking a little bit about Ted. When I met Ted, it was also back in Newport Beach. I don't know what year, because pickleball years are kind of crazy. You know? Like 1 year feels like 5. But I think the way I met him, it was through Matt Chow. I don't know if you ever met Matt Chow.
Oh, I have a history with Matt. For sure.
You do? That's
for
funny.
sure.
A good one or a bad one?
You know what? A spicy one that's turned out great.
Okay, that's awesome. Matt's a good guy.
He's a really good guy.
Yeah. And actually, just out of curiosity, is Ted involved with Carbon at all?
He was originally. So when Garrett, so funny story about Garrett. So, or interesting story about Garrett. So Garrett, when we were building the restaurant in Newport, Ted and I were, Garrett actually helped with design of like layout design and stuff like that we were submitting to the city, and CAD work design stuff. Smart kid, And so he was helping him with that, and I don't even think he charged me. It was really nice of him. So and this was, basically at the time, and again, we're coming out of COVID, and he was working as a sommelier at Big Canyon, and then got let go because of COVID. Basically, it shut down, right? So he was trying to find his way and figure it out, and he was starting to develop carbon, but as a young entrepreneur, needed funds, and so Ted helped him by investing a little bit of money into it so he can get the first production and everything else going. And that turned out to be a huge success story. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
since then, Garrett and his partner, don't blank on his name, but they bought him out. They bought Ted out, and
Okay.
Ted used that money to invest basically into the hub and move on to the next thing. But yeah, he was pretty integral in the beginning stages of Carbon and help it go, and then help the sales and the connection with some of the distribution channels, the whole deal.
Yeah, very cool. Very smart, Garrett. Very nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, so I guess my next question to you, and I don't know if this is true or not, but is Pickleball Superstore kind of like a rival to like Pickleball Central, or like what's the difference there?
Well, good versus evil is what you're saying? No, no, I'm joking. That was probably not appropriate joke, but basically e-commerce platforms, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're both large-scale e-commerce platforms. They've been around for a long time. They're a much larger company than Pickleball Superstore. Our main differentiator is that we are, really community-focused, community-owned. And the
Mm-hmm.
community-owned part is really key, where, we take a philosophy that pickleball's, really from the streets and the community and everything else. And so we want to gather as many from the community and share the ownership, share
Yeah.
the journey, give people, revenue as they bring in sales, all that kind of stuff, versus just put a banner at, at a tournament or things like that. So just a different philosophy of marketing, different philosophy of who we are as a company. At the end of the day, we're both basically selling the same products.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a customer service job. When you order a Valero paddle, you want it shipped that day and, showing up the next day or so. So a lot of it's customer service, a lot of it's ease of, ordering and having a wide breadth of, variety. But yeah, we're, I would say, and I like, John, the guy who runs it really well. Like the company, I think there's room for everybody. So I was joking about the good versus evil a little bit, but you would say that we're competitors, but our differentiators are really our leadership, our technology in our super affiliate program, and the fact that we open it up to others who want to be involved in the ownership of the company.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And kind of going back to what we were talking about in the beginning, when when Pickleball Night America was brought up, what are your thoughts? Because me myself, I've always been really good friends with Steve Kuhn, right? And he was the one that started that thing, and you were obviously involved in it. But do you think Steve Kuhn not being in pickleball is a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing? Do you think he should be around? What are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, I just spoke at that conference in Las Vegas, and Steve was there, so we had a nice long chat, which was nice. And I think he's a very smart guy. I think he did it for all the right reasons. I think the idea of being around, I think is he should certainly be around. He's earned his way. He's if there's ever a Hall of, well, I guess there is a Hall of Fame, but he should be in it. I mean. He did a lot for the players.
Yeah.
Right. He did a lot for the sport. Looking at it differently, I think he's brought a lot to the table. I think now he's trying to regroup to see what his next phase is and where he's at. He just had a baby, as you did. Happy Father's Day, by the way.
Thank you. You too.
And so I think he's taking a breath. I don't want to speak for him, but I think he's taking a bit of a breath. I think he's enjoying being a father. I think he's kind of regrouping where he wants to be. I don't think it's a financial issue of like, I got to get back at it or anything like that. So, but I think I think pickleball's better off with him. Personally, I think people want to see him. I think the amount of applause that he had at this conference, when he came up was substantial. So I think people respect him, and I certainly do. And I like to see him around. I think it's good for the industry for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I always thought Steve's just overall vision of pickleball was kind of like top notch, and I definitely miss him being around. And he was basically the first person really to give me a platform and move to Texas Dripping Springs, and he gave me a place to live, and I was able to train with all this like higher level pros like Deckel, Rob Nunnery at the time, and Vivian David, and I'm super thankful for Steve, and I get a little bit sad thinking about him not being around anymore, but
Yeah,
things happen.
I get it. I think you'll see. I don't think he'll completely, disappear in the wind. I think you'll see him at a higher level, probably international level. Um, I think it's good for him to probably, him personally to take a little, break, see what he's created. From an entrepreneur's, in a business owner's perspective, sometimes it's good when the founder and the entrepreneur who starts the company isn't necessarily the person to then continue on with the company to grow to the next level. And in this particular case, with all the chaos, surrounding it, I think it really took a toll on everyone in the process, not just Steve, but everybody, right? The fans included, the players for sure, everyone. So I think he'll reemerge. If I were to guess, and he didn't say anything, so this is a complete guess, it's probably more of a world international, kind of, embodiment type of position, and figure out how he can find a spot there. But right now he's just stoked on his new baby and having a good time, which good for him.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I kind of talked to him a little bit here and there, and wish him Happy Father's Day and all these good things. But yeah, he's an awesome guy. So I hope to see him soon. But moving on, let's talk about a little bit more pickleball related. One of the questions that I had for you was, there's a lot of you're kind of like a little bit into paddle technology too, right? Because you said which paddle company is coming out that you're involved with?
Well, Titan Pickleball.
Titan Pickleball, okay,
Right.
and that's not out yet.
It's not.
Okay.
It's not. And it's really Ken Tran's company. I mean, I may own a little piece of the cap table, but and I'm helping, and how I can help on the back end of it. But yeah, it's interesting technology that he's coming out with, and doing a good job, and he's leveraging off of all of his years' experience in manufacturing. So it'll be neat.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to take a look at those. But that said, like, do you think pickleball is getting too powerful? Do you think where do you see yourself, or where do you see pickleball going in 3-4 years, and where do you think it should be, as far as like paddle technology goes?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer this question a little bit differently than you probably expected. So so Jason Aspis, who I like a ton, with the Kitchen, one of the co-founders of the Kitchen, is now the president of UPA, right? And I just heard a podcast with him, I think with Joe Braverman, basically in a real altruistic approach of for the betterment of the sport and to slow the sport down and the safety and everything else of this paddle technology. And ultimately the UPA is trying to be another governing body, right, to compete or be one next to USA Pickleball. And basically and I think this is all true, and he believes all this. And I think so his position was for the betterment of the sport, the safety, to slow it down and everything else. So first of all, I agree with all of that. I from my perspective, with owning the Hub and Pickleball Superstore, and and the rec player, the 99% of the players who aren't getting contracts like you and playing at the pro level, like that's really the focus of we're ultimately we look at from a business model, to say the growth of the sport comes from the streets, basically, right? And then ultimately give them a pathway up to becoming a pro. But everything you're saying with the safety and how people wearing all, we sell a ton of safety glasses now, to give you
What brand?
a lot of Gearbox.
Nice.
They make a really good product. We carry some other ones, but our number one seller is from Glasses, our gearbox.
Awesome. And they've been around there for a long time too, coming from racquetball too.
Racquetball,
Yeah.
right. So long-winded answer to this. So I believe that it should slow down and everything else. My concern um, is that with the UPA coming in, this is probably a little bit controversial what I'm going to say, but here we go. So with the UPA coming in, acting as a secondary governing body, right? That's their position. It's a for-profit company, which is fine, but it's owned by basically, Pickleball Inc. or Topco or, what Tom Dundon's group that came in and bought it and bought, Central and, tournaments and the PPA, and now is merged with the MLP. And so it's that group there. So Jason answers to, I believe, Connor Pardo, as well as Bryce, who runs the PPA, answers to, Connor, and then the MLP leader, and I'm going blank on his name, but they all answer to Connor, basically. So that's basically the pyramid structure, right? The problem that I have is that the PPA and the MLP, for them to basically get to where they need to be from a business model, in my perspective, they need eyeballs, right? They need people watching it on TV.
Yeah.
And if you slow the game down on a professional level, that probably won't help eyeballs. I think that they need to see that speed. They need to see, these amazing athletes at their highest level, and the technology that brings and everything else. So it's a bit of a conflict of interest, for lack of a better term, because I would think that the PPA would want to see all this technology continue to go and get faster and better, because that creates a better product for TV.
Not always.
Yeah, well, to your point, right? Because slowing down, maybe you can get longer firefights and stuff like that. But I equate it to watching, again, people are going to probably hate me for this, watching senior pros versus, you guys, the pros, right? The speed of the game is so much slower that it's way more interesting watching, I'll word it this way, way more interesting watching the pros versus senior pros. Now, how technology is going to affect that will be, really interesting. So that's just my take. I don't know the answers, and you could create the argument, which I think you're doing, is to basically, oh no, slowing that down really makes them be more, athletic and more specific and, better shots and do all these things. I'm just wondering if, I'd love to hear your take on it, but that's my concern.
Yeah, no, I totally get where you're coming from. The number one thing that kind of spoke out to me, right, it's the speed of the game, right? And in my opinion, I'll start with tennis itself, right? So there's a lot of players in tennis, and tennis I think is extremely fun to watch, but there's a lot of players in tennis that they call them serve bots, right? It's like big serve, ace, maybe big serve and a forehand points over, and they don't love to watch that. It's too fast, right? They want to see like the rallies kind of going back and forth. They want to see Alcaraz and sliding all over the clay court and getting a crazy ball, and Djokovic like on the reach, whatever.
Right.
So that to me is kind of what translates to pickleball when it comes to like a firefight, right? It's like crazy, and then reset, okay, a couple things, and then crazy again, which I think would be created with less power and more spin, right? That said, on the other hand, there's also racquetball. I think racquetball, the reason why it lost so many eyeballs, right, is because it just got way too fast. I mean, it's so hard to keep track of what's even going on in the racquetball court. I personally like playing it because it's so fast and it kind of helps everything. But when you watch it, I don't know if you ever sat down and watch anything, but it's like,
yeah, for sure.
It's like, oh my God, there's so much serving.
Right.
And then it's like, if you have a long rally, you're kind of lucky.
Right.
And a lot of people might not think that because they might be watching the highlights.
Right.
The highlights is always like, there's like this 10, 11 ball rally, but realistically speaking, it's like 1, 2, 3 and gone.
Right.
Right. So when it comes to pickleball, I think, first of all, and kind of like I mentioned before, everyone needs to be playing with somewhat of the same equipment, first and foremost, right? And secondly, I think you would see a lot more athleticism out of players if there was like a lot less power, and not only that, but just a lot more spin because you'd be able to create things out of places that right now you can't create from,
Right.
right? Where let's say Deco Bar, for example, which I'm really close friends with.
Hmm.
Um, First of all, he's a unit, right? He's huge.
Yeah.
He already hits it super hard. And then if he had like the Gen 3, which is super powerful. Like if you speed anything up at him, like that ball, whether it's coming back or not, the point's over,
Right.
right? If it comes back as a winner, because he hits it super hard and the power makes it like just insane.
Hmm.
And then if he like mishits it or something along those lines, then the point's over regardless. So I don't know how the power itself makes for better points when you get a ball up here and the ball just disappears basically and the point's over.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so I think in my opinion, it would be less power to some extent, right? You don't want to like wood paddle power sort of thing, but a lot
Hmm.
less power, and you would want to up the spin a lot more, and just kind of see what people are able to create and what kind of spins and the RPMs on the ball. But that's just my long
No,
take
well,
on
I,
it.
I think your opinion's valid. I think you're right. You know, I guess I watch some of these guys and even some of our members at the hubs that they hit the ball so hard anyway, no matter what they're using.
Mm-hmm.
So like the power to me is more impactful from old people like me, from a rec level that now this paddle's generating that power for me basically. So and I think there should be parameters of all that. I'm just wondering, like when I watch the pros, I'm so impressed on how technical you guys are.
Mm-hmm.
And when you make a mistake, you're just going to pay for the mistake, whether it has more power or not. Basically, you're just paying for that mistake. So, but to your point, I mean, you're right. I don't want the power to take over the game, and that's what is happening more at the 99 percentile, the rec level
Mm-hmm.
play, which doesn't make it as fun for the beginner and all the people coming into the sport. All of a sudden they go against someone with this ridiculous power paddle, and they're just learning, and all of a sudden they're just being crushed the ball like
Right.
this really isn't as fun as we thought it was going to be. And
Mm-hmm.
that's my more concern from the pro level. I mean, you bring up a good point: more spin, more control, equalize the game with a little bit less power, because it is fun to see someone rip a ball and then have them, someone return that ball and throw a lob up or something just to defend it. And so no, I see it. I agree with it all.
Yeah, for sure. And I know, well, I'm coming from a professional standpoint, where you're coming from the amateur, standpoint too. That said, like I've done my fair share of like open plays, right? Like I kind of go with a friend and have fun, and I just like think around, hit thirds, work on a couple things here and there. And even though these people might not be 3 O's, maybe they're like 4 O's, 4 5s, some of the power that they have with some of these paddles, it's like ridiculous, right?
It's ripping it.
Ripping it, especially when the actual skill of like keeping the ball in with proper technique and proper spin and
Right.
all this stuff is not there, right? So then you start to question, like, okay, like I can get out of the way of this ball because I can see it like 40 miles coming, but can a 60-year-old Susan get out of the way fast enough, or even know that the ball's gonna go out or whatever, or
Right.
recognize that it's gonna be a drive? I think it's just extremely dangerous. When you have, you can say, really powerful paddle with somebody that comes from racquetball and is just swinging wildlessly because they know that they're gonna win the point if they maybe get a body bag on somebody.
Right.
I just don't think that's like the
Well,
best way to do it.
well, it's not. Well, so then let me ask you a question. So if we 100% we're on the same page and,
Yeah.
and agree with that, do you ever see the standards being different for pros? If the UPA is developing these new standards for which is the PPA and the MLP, do you see them coming out with a different standard for pros than they do for rec?
It's possible, but I think it kind of kills the point of playing with the same gear as the pros does, right? Because me growing up, what do you play growing up? What sport do you play growing up?
Basketball.
Basketball. Okay. So I don't know. With basketball, it might be sneakers, right? But I grew up playing tennis, and I understand that I'm never gonna play with Roger Federer's rackets, but kind of like thinking that you're buying this racket because you like this. Athlete, and you're like, oh, like this racket's gonna help me because this is what he plays with. Not whether he plays with it or not, we don't know. It could be paying differently, right?
Right.
But I think that's the whole ideology of play like the pros or play with the pros or whatever. It's like, oh, I really like Tyson McGuffin. I'm gonna buy his paddle, but then, well, he's playing with a different paddle.
Right.
Like that to me sounds like a little bit weird.
Well, it's certainly weird from and I just had this conversation at this conference that I spoke at.
Hmm.
So from Pickleball Superstore standpoint, and even the Hub, because we have tons of pro shops, obviously, is that people buy paddles and they want to buy Tyson McGuffin paddle, since you brought it up, for example,
Hmm.
right? And because they want to aspire to be, to
Correct.
play like Tyson.
Yep.
So if he can do it with that paddle, I know it's a good paddle. I can go out and do it. Now, to your point, if it's different, that's an issue. And from a manufacturer's perspective, and Yola in this particular case, they wouldn't necessarily like, the concept of him playing with a different paddle at a pro level. But I'm not too sure if that aligns. Here's my question, I guess, and I just don't know the answers, so
Hmm.
it's an interesting conversation. I'm not sure if that aligns with, again, the top level at the PPA's mindset to say, is this the best for television eyeballs? And maybe to your point, it is the best for television eyeballs because one, slowing the game down and making it more technical is more interesting to watch. It's like a lot of people say they like watching women's pickleball more than men's because they just can't hit it as hard, essentially.
Hmm.
But I'm not 100% sure about that. But anyway,
Yeah. Well, with these paddles now, there's used
yeah,
them now.
exactly. Again, but anyway, you kind of get my point.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting argument. And then how much power does the Yolas and Selkirks and everything else have in the world, to basically help shape the PPA and the MLP and pickleball in general from the pro level? They certainly, which is different than the amateur level.
Hmm.
It's the Wild West, DJ.
It is the
It
Wild
is the
West.
Wild West, man. I don't, and I was just having a conversation with Garrett at the Los Cab PPA,
Mhm.
and he was telling me about his new technology that Carbon's coming out, which sounds amazing. And now let's see if it gets passed. But anyway, so
Yeah, you just never know.
yeah, so it's the Wild West. But I'll go on record that I agree. Slowing down slowing it down, having parameters, making sure everyone is, using the correct equipment and they're all on the same level playing field, just like golf, just like baseball, just all the sports. Ultimately, you gotta have a parameter of this is what's fair and legal, and but do it in a way that the manufacturers can still be innovative and help advance the game, but not just by power.
Correct.
Yeah.
Do you think there's ever a possibility that the pickleball court changes? Do you think there's a possibility they make a slightly bigger court? Do you think there's a possibility they make a slightly longer kitchen, maybe a wider net? Do you think there's anything that could even remotely get there?
I don't. I think that ship has sailed. I think that you know that it's so embedded now with you know so many courts already out there, so much investment to get the sport to where it is now. It would be difficult, to change that. Now, again, you could say, oh, it makes sense potentially at the pro level, but I don't even think it does there. I don't think the overall size of the court is going to change. Now, I do think that stadiums like we built at the Hub and we built in all of them in San Diego and Alameda, everything else is we made our stadium courts larger. Now the actual court's the same size, but
Mhm.
the exterior of the court is substantially larger.
Yeah.
So I don't see that, and then you're seeing shots from 10 feet off the court, ripping around the post. And, I saw Riley Newman make this shot. Like literally he was 10 feet off the court above the, rail into the stands, catching a ball, ripping it back, around the post and catching the corner. I'm just like, who the hell does that?
Yeah.
So I think having more room around the court is important in all these, which is a concern when you see all these people rushing to market building facilities.
Mm-hmm.
Like they better build them right, because when they don't build them right, the whole concept, build it, they will come. Well, not if you build them wrong, because I'm sure you played on courts where like, I can't, operate on this thing basically.
No, for sure. Especially like I have longer limbs, right? Like my arms are long, whatever. So when I'm swinging, I mean, maybe technically speaking, I shouldn't be swinging so far out, right? But if somebody's serving big to you and you have to stand further back, and every time you hit a return, you're hitting the fence, right? It's not appropriate. The other thing too, this happened recently. I'm not gonna name any names, but it was a PPA Texas where we played a match, and basically we played on a court where every time it was, not every time, but like a lot of the times where it was served from their right side to our right side of the court, right? So the juice, it would, me or my partner would basically be like hitting like the what is it called? The fence to the right of us.
Right. The sideline, right? So like the side fence.
Right. So I'm basically like, shoulder pumping the fence every single time and trying to make a switch or something if I'm unstacking. So whether it's spin, whether it's power, whether it's the court needing to be bigger, something has to change, right? Because a match shouldn't be decided on serves and missed returns, or somewhere along those lines. The other thing that I wanted to ask you about, and I don't actually know how much you play, but what are your thoughts on the Vulcan ball?
So first of all, I'm a 6-time regional champion. I want you to know that. Yes. Here we go.
You do play a lot.
Tell you, it's been a while. I'm an old man. So back in the day when, the field wasn't as big, let me put it that way. My wife's a national champion. So there you go. We qualified together, but long story.
There we go.
But, so I just played with it recently, actually. And at the Hub, because some friends are playing in the tournament, and so they pulled out the Vulcan ball, and so that was actually the first time I've ever played with it. Super hard, which again, back to speed. I felt like the ball I could hit it a lot harder and faster. It was just a faster game because the ball to me felt a lot harder. This is just my impression of it. Literally, maybe by the third game, I was like, what's wrong with the ball, right? It was, wobbly and out of shape, out of round, and, he pulled out a new ball. I was surprised at that. So after a while, I got used to, playing with the hardness, playing with the ball. It just takes a few games to kind of, feel the difference. But that was my 2 cents on it. I think they're continuing to try to make it better, is what I hear. Yeah. I think they're continuing to tweak it and everything else, but it seemed very hard and go out around pretty fast.
Yeah. Do you think there's a possibility out there that a pickleball is not going to be a plastic ball, whatever?
I don't think so. I think, it's kind of like, again, I'll equate it to baseball, right? Because somebody brought this up. Jason Aspis brought it up. It's like, the Major League Baseball uses wooden bats, and could they do aluminum? Could they do everything else? Well, now it's so embedded in the sport and everything else. I don't see them changing the ball. I think that would be too much of a change for. And again, that's a 135-year-old sport, but. But so I don't think it would happen in pickleball. I think that's kind of the beauty of the sport. I just read a pre-book by Max Manthau, Purple Jesus.
I love that guy.
Oh my God, I love that guy. Anyway, so he asked me to read a book. It's actually his thesis in his master's program for anthropology, and in this book, he talks about pickleball, about it's a funny name. It's played with a wiffle ball, and because of that, it it reduces a lot of the eliteness of it going into it, or I'm not using the right words here, but basically it, it's like, oh, it's just pickleball, and I'm just hitting a wiffle ball. Like, don't take yourself too seriously was kind of the concept of what he was trying to say with it. So I personally don't see that changing in the sport. I think that would be hard to change from an overall perspective.
That's fair. I think, I don't think the plastic ball will go anywhere. That said, I do have an issue. So when I started playing pickleball, right, like pretty much it was extremely accessible, right? So paddle might have been $79, right? And you can, at the time, I think we were playing with Onyx Fuse 2, which,
Sure.
I don't
You
know
and
how
everybody
much.
else.
Yeah, I don't know how much it was, but it was decently cheap, right? And there were some Duras and whatever. That said, obviously, paddles have gone, I mean, crazy. I mean, I think I've seen paddles maybe up to like 280, maybe 300,
Oh,
right?
350.
350.
Yeah.
I've never bought one. I'm lucky enough, people send me free paddles and stuff, and obviously I'm super fortunate. That said, tennis rackets, in my opinion, they probably have better technology, right? Probably more expensive technology. They've been around longer, and honestly, I mean, I could look it up, but I don't even know if they're as expensive as pickleball paddles.
Right.
So do you think pickleball paddles are being overpriced?
Well, I think the margins on them from the manufacturing levels are gigantic. You know, so from that aspect, you could say yes, but they're investing in technology, they're investing in players, they're investing in a bunch of stuff.
Right.
Now, there are a bunch of paddles that are available that are carbon fiber and a number of things of just brands that they take their business philosophy is, I'm not going to go have a pro player sign with me. I'm not going to go do all this advertising, everything else, but I'm going to position my paddle at $79 or $99 or whatever that fit those price range. Unfortunately, you don't hear of them as much, or when you see them, you question, well, is that a good paddle? Like, I don't want to go and spend my time to go play a relatively competitive sport, any sport, even if it's fun. I still want to, do my best at least and win. And, I don't want my equipment to not perform, and then not have as good of a time with my equipment. And that's the mindset when you're going out buying it now, I think, a lower cost paddle, right? Because people do shop by price.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you that there's a number of $99 paddles out there that are great. That, and by the way, back to the 99 percentile of the amateurs are out there, that they wouldn't make a hill of beans worth of difference. Right. But there's really good technology in the upper end paddles that you would, see instantly and say, I can play better with this. This does more for me than that one does, basically. But you have skills that, I don't. So I could use a baseball bat and be fine. I could use a 2x4 and smack it. So anyway, but that's my take on it. They're out there. They just don't have the marketing. They don't have the reach. They don't have, like, literally at Pickleball Superstore, I think we have like 500 paddles stacked up that people want us to sell their brands. And we're like we can't bring that in because we bring in everything in inventory and sell it. But like, what's their marketing? How do they, get eyeballs on it? We can push it to our huge database and all that kind of stuff. But it's too difficult for us. We're not in the position of marketing, building someone else's brand. We can help, but we're not in that position. And so, and when someone comes to us and say, oh no, this is a carbon-based, great thermoform paddle, and it'll retail for $79. Like, great, but how do we sell it?
Right, totally.
So those are the challenges with that.
Yeah, no, I get where you're coming from. I guess, yeah, I mean, I don't know, right? Like, I don't know how much these volleys are, but they play nicely. I know most paddles that I played with before Volair kind of go up to 200 plus, which seems really expensive. But at the end of the day, the market is whatever people are willing to pay, right? So
Yeah, and the thing that bothers me more than the price is the durability of it, right? And
mhm,
so, we went through the whole delamination phase on these things, and the grit wears out, and now people are buying paddles every 6 months or so, or even faster, right? So with the tennis racket, to your point, you can replace the strings, but the racket itself is can last a long time.
right.
I'm not a tennis player, but I think that's the case.
Yeah.
And so those technologies need to also bring in value of longevity, and I think you would be less concerned or the community would be less concerned of buying something relatively expensive. The other issue that people have is the turn of products, meaning, what was, an exciting new top selling product 6 months ago isn't selling today.
Hmm.
It's, it's the next one and the next one and the next one. So it's the Wild West, DJ. It's the
Hmm.
Wild West. So
Yeah.
but I agree on pricing and durability and all those things, and that'll find its way.
Yeah. So for an amateur, how long do you think just a normal random paddle last, or it should last them?
Well, I would at least a year.
Hmm.
And obviously it depends on how hard you hit the ball and how often you play, right? But I still have a carbon 2X that I think Garrett gave me, when he first made them, and I still pull that thing. I love that paddle. I still pull it out and play with it, and
Hmm. And it's not delammed.
it's not delammed. And in fact, it's so funny you said that, because yesterday I actually was,
Testing it.
doing the thumb test on it and seemed to be fine. But I don't hit the ball that hard, and
Hmm.
I'm more backhand, and I try to play soft, but that's just my game.
Yeah.
But anyway, so but it should. I would think a year is a reasonable number, right?
Yeah, I also think a lot because I do think paddles do last quite often. I think we're just in because I think basically pros are so accessible to people now, right? Where in tennis, I can't go ask Rafa Nadal, you know,
Right,
right, how often do you change your rackets? We don't know,
right,
you know. But anyone can come and ask me, and I'm like, hey, like, yeah, I think like every other tournament or something, right? And then you get all these like different answers from like 20 different pros or whatever because we're so accessible. And everyone's like, oh, like, well, my paddle's not good after a week.
right,
It's like, well, that's not the case, right? But if I'm playing against, let's say, Ben Johns, right, which is already the best player in the world, and he has some of the best equipment out there, I want to give myself the best possible chance I can to try to match that, right?
right.
Because he's already better than me skill wise, you know?
Well, come on, man, you're
Well,
there.
depending on the day. But that said, like when it comes to amateurs, I just don't think it works that way, you know? But I do believe, especially because I do teach here and there. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times that I teach a lesson to the same guy in a month, and he's like, "Oh, I'm trying this paddle out now. Like,
Right,
I just bought this paddle.
right.
Like, well, I got this from like my friend," and it's like, "Wow, like." Well, first of all, you should play with it long enough to see if you even like it, because you're not gonna get used to it in like an hour lesson sort of thing.
Right.
And secondly, is like these people are spending a lot of money, resources, and effort to like try to find the best paddle for them. And I think part of that comes again from a lot of us pros saying like, oh yeah, I use my paddle for like 3 weeks, and it's like yeah, but it doesn't apply to like
Right.
everybody, right? It's like in tennis. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it was like 6 or 8 games, right? But in tennis, like Rafa Nadal, if 6 games go by or something, and then he changes rackets mid match because he wants the tension of the
Strings.
strings
Yeah.
to be higher, right? Probably.
Right.
And he just likes the feel of that better. But it doesn't mean that's what you're supposed to do all the time.
Correct.
So I don't know. I mean, there's
Yeah.
like you said, the Wild West.
Well, you know, I'm conflicted with this conversation because I'm, part owner of Pickleball Superstore, right? So
Yeah.
I think they should change every day. And no, I'm
Yeah,
joking.
yeah. Just change every hour.
Yeah,
Just buy one at all times.
Yeah. So we were at Nationals, and my wife was playing with a partner, and he changed his paddle, I think, 7 times during the course of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Like mid-game, he would go and grab a different paddle or whatever, and I was just thinking, this is a disaster. I didn't get it, but anyway.
Yeah. I mean, that's easily also like $1,000.
Oh yeah,
I mean, yeah, it's crazy. But that said, I'm gonna thank my sponsors real quick, and then I'm gonna open up the pod to whatever you want to talk about. But obviously, Hesacor, You Drippin, Head, Stack, Valair, thank you so much for everything. And you're not gonna like this, but I have a Pickleball Central affiliate.
All right, good. Let it rip. That's all
and
good.
yeah, thank you Pickleball Central for also sponsoring this this podcast. I don't remember what the code is, but I will make sure that I do for the next podcast. But yeah, now it's whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah. And first of all, the guys, John Crowley at Pickleball Central, they're good people, and there's room for everybody, right? Just a different philosophy of how we do it. So first, and thank you, DJ. For me, it's been a really fun ride. Meeting all these people and being involved. I had a little piece of Duper, a little piece of MLP, and the Hub certainly, and Pickleball Superstore, and then all the people I've met through there. We're now up in Alameda. The Hub in Alameda is the home of the Bay Area Breakers, and that's been super fun. Down in San Diego, we're the home of the Hard Eights, and we're going to do this NorCal, SoCal rival. So, being a part of all this is really fun to see how it's, growing. Pickleball in general growing in the industry. I feel it benefits the pros, it benefits the amateurs, it benefits the whole thing. So, more of it as far as I'm concerned. So I love this platform that you're doing, and I think it's all healthy and fun and going all in the right direction. So hang on, I have a present for you. So there you go. You're a lifetime member of the Hub now.
Lifetime member of the Hub, guys.
There you go. Right.
Shout out to the Hub.
Yeah. So anyway, but that's it. I just want to thank my partners and and all my members and all of our supporters on our end too. So it's been great, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Appreciate you taking the time, and shout out to the Hub. I know you were just there playing some pickleball and hanging out, and yeah, let's go the Hub.
Let's go the Hub. All right,
Thank
man.
you.
Have a great day.